What's up, party people? Coming back with another relatively easy die for you today. This will be a scrunch design, and it's easy enough that kids can do it, and they usually turn out looking really great. So starting, as always, with a brand new white t-shirt. This shirt has been washed. I've soaked it in soda ash. The soda ash works with our Procyon dyes. We'll be using Procyon MX dyes from Jacquard. To get started, make sure that your shirt has been wrung out. It should be damp, not sopping wet. This shirt, I just threw through the spin cycle on my washing machine, and it does a pretty good job of getting it just a little bit damp, which is great for flattening the shirt. It holds the folds really well. So it doesn't really matter how you start this shirt. The trick with scrunch designs, and any tie-dye really, is that you want to create texture on your shirt. If I were to just dye this right now, everything would be dyed the same color. So we create peaks within our shirt. It's the same whether you scrunch it like that or whether you do an accordion fold. When you create peaks and valleys, you're giving the dye a spot to dye on the top, and you're saving the spot in the middle, or if you flip it over, you can even dye that another color. So when you're scrunching, make sure that you're creating your peaks, but that you're also pushing through so that it's on the surface here to create those valleys. It's important to have both. And if you want lots of texture, create really small peaks. And if you want bigger, swooping texture or flowy dye, you can create bigger, looser peaks. I like to have a lot of texture in mine, so I'm going to take a little bit of time just to scrunch this up. When you're done, you're actually going to end up with a smaller version of this t-shirt as it's laid out right now. So I'm going to start. You can start anywhere you want. I'll start right in the middle, and I'm going to start to just scrunch this together. And as you're doing it, you're pulling together the shirt. If you find that you end up with a big section, you can break that down. Push your fingers down through to the surface of the table or the countertop underneath and bring it together. This only takes a couple minutes, but the more texture you put in there, the better. Make sure you get right down to the corners. You want all of your corners and your sleeves to have lots of texture as well. Break up any of those big sections that are either lying flat on your countertop or sticking up high above the surface. Here I'm ending up with a ridge, so I'm going to just stick my fingers and break that down a little bit, creating a little bit more texture, more pattern. It's tricky around the collar, but do your best. And bring everything in close together. From here, you can use elastics, but I'm going to use kite cord today because I tend to be able to get it a little bit tighter. I'll show you how I tie this kite cord. I tie a little knot at the end. This will hold my slip knot, and then I tie a slip knot just above that. This opens and closes, and you'll be able to wrap this around any section of the shirt. So I'm going to loop this over, slide it down underneath the shirt, and then the slip knot on top. Your first one, you don't want to pull too tight right away because you'll end up cinching everything together in one spot. You want to try to keep the shirt flat as it is to keep those peaks and valleys, but tighten it. You'll see as I tighten this, it lifts up one side. I'm just going to flatten that down. And then you're going to continue looping this underneath into a new section and back over the top. And from here, use your hand to push the shirt flat down as you tighten the kite cord. Here I have just I don't know if you can see it, but I have a small triangle that doesn't have any texture. That's just going to end up one color. So let's add some texture in there and crunch it together. I'm going to loop my kite cord over top of that section to hold it underneath. And then use my hand to keep it tight against the countertop. I'm going to tighten it a little bit. Over here, I have some more flat sections, especially on the sleeves. They tend to poke out a little bit. So grab them with your kite cord and cinch them in. And you're going to try to have different angles across your shirt. If your shirt lifts up a bit, go over to that section, hold it down, and then tighten it. You can use your whole arm. I'm going across the collar now, back down, tuck in some of these bottom sections. Each time you go across, you're going to get a little bit tighter and your shirt's going to get a little bit smaller. This section's all wide open. Going to crunch it, scrunch it back together, push it in with everything else, and I'm going to tighten this up. Across my collar, back to the bottom, bring in some of those loose ends. It's nice to have a big countertop that you can work on, but any surface will really do. If you're doing this with your kids, they may need a little bit of help just to get this nice and tight. It can work with two people. Have somebody hold down the top as you tighten and another person to gently pull everything together. As I mentioned, elastics can do the trick here, but I like how tight the kite cord brings everything. You can't really go too many times around here. I guess you could, but you can't really add too many sections of kite cord. The good thing is the dye will flow underneath all this kite cord, so you won't see any of the kite cord lines, really. You'll just see your scrunch pattern in the end. Another little tip, if you're looking for white shirts, you can of course order them online. I found a local t-shirt print shop that has lots of t-shirts, and I place my orders through them. And they can supply me white shirts from a whole bunch of different brands. You can try different brands of shirts to see which ones you like best, to see which one your customers like best or your friends like best. I try to go for a mid-range shirt that's not too cheap and not too pricey. But again, 100% cotton is what you need every time if you're using these dyes. I'll probably go a couple more times here. When you get to the end, you can really tie off your shirt however you'd like. Doesn't have to be a super tight knot because no one's going to be pulling this apart except you at the end. So I just snip my cord. What I like to do is loop it under some of these extra cords that are crossing, and then I'll just tie a little half knot right on top that I can pull somewhat tight. So here's our scrunch t-shirt. You can see the tag on mine still, which is a good indication of where the top of the shirt is, which allows you to give some designs. I'm going to do a diagonal right down the front here. So I like to know where the tag is. And if you look at the bottom, again, we have this nice scrunched pattern on both the top and the bottom. And there aren't a lot of sections that have a big surface area, which is good, creates a lot of texture. And now we're ready for dyeing. Okay, I've prepped my surface for dyeing. I like to cover my countertop with a garbage bag, and then I have like a boot or a shoe tray and a little screen on top. I try really hard not to get too much dye dripping through. This is actually water that you see underneath there because I rinsed it off. But it's good to cover your surfaces because that dye has a way of sneaking into everywhere, especially the powdered form. So keep your dyes separate. I like to mix them up in my basement and then bring them up here onto the covered surface. But we are ready to dye. So here's our pattern, our scrunch pattern here. I know where the label is, so I'm facing the shirt as though I was looking at it in front of me here. Today I have two different colors. I actually have two bottles of the golden yellow from Jacquard, and then I have jet black from Jacquard. These are both Procyon dyes. They are great for reacting with the shirt. They'll leave really bright colors. I actually mixed twice the recommended amount. It said 2 teaspoons for 8 ounces. So I mixed 4 teaspoons for 8 ounces of water in both of these dyes. It just gives a little bit of a brighter dye. That's up to you. I just do it if I really want bright colors. So what I'm going to start, I'm going to actually do like a diagonal stripe of orange across the center, going from one shoulder down to the opposite waist. And then I'm going to fill in the rest with black, and then I'll flip it over and do the same. So I'm going to get started with the golden yellow. And as I mentioned, I'm just going to go straight kind of on a diagonal like this, and I'm going to fill it in. You want enough to cover the surface, but it will be interesting if not all of it soaks through to the other side, because you'll end up with some white lines in the middle, some interesting patterns. But I am going to try to use a lot of this orange dye to bring out the colors in this diagonal pattern. Because we've scrunched the shirt, it will actually, when it's unfolded, have a lot of texture, and it will expand beyond this straight line. So even though it looks really straight, you'll see in the final design, stay tuned for that it will expand and look really neat. So you do want to saturate this enough that you're going to get bright colors. And I'm going right down to the edges there and up to the collar. I'm going to save some for the opposite side because we're going to flip this over in a second. Now I'm going to use the jet black for the top shoulder and the bottom part right there. And this is really, really black. I really like this black. Tends to stay fairly black when you dye with it. I'm not going right up against the orange quite yet because it will bleed a little bit. The orange and the black tends to get a little bit muddy when they're really on top of each other. So I'm keeping that separation just for now, and you will see I'll get a little bit closer at the end. The other good thing about the jet black is that it kind of shows you where you still need a little bit dye. It's hard to see it on the video, but there will be areas that are a little bit gray. The fluffiness of the cotton kind of shows through, and those are areas that just need a little bit more saturation. So you can go around and look for those and then cover them with the jet black. Now I'm going to go down onto this corner. Because we tied it so tightly with the kite cord, you will end up with some white texture, some white lines in this shirt as well, which is going to look really neat. Some people like that. Other people like to completely cover their shirt with dye. That's okay too. I kind of like it somewhere in the middle. And again, I'm creeping up on that orange, but I'm not fully touching it quite yet. The other thing is, if you want your colors to combine, let's say you're using a red and a blue, and then you wanted a line of purple where they blend, you can leave your shirt somewhat damp like I did from the soda ash, and then the colors will pull into each other. If you don't want those and you want really crisp color separation, you can let your shirt dry out after you've scrunched it up. Leave it for a few days, even up to a week. As long as it's been soaked in soda ash, when you come back with the dye, it will react, but the colors won't bleed into each other as much. So that's one tip that I've learned. You can let your shirts dry with the soda ash on it. It's not completely necessary that you dye while they're still damp. It's just easier for folding and scrunching, and then let it dry out if you want. Now I'm going to come back and I'm just going to try to inch up on that orange there just a little bit and get a little bit of black into those lines. And as this batches, as it cures, as the dyes kind of take form, they will pull into each other again because I did soak it in soda ash ahead of time. So I'm going to leave the top like this. Now we're going to flip it over and we're going to do the exact same pattern on the back, matching up the colors where they were. So I'll flip it. You have a little bit of a sense of where your orange was, so I'm going to start with that. You won't need quite as much dye on the reverse side because you can see already there's black coming through, there's orange coming through. So you can go easy on the dye on the reverse side once you've already done one side. And just to be clear, this isn't only the back of the shirt. This is also dyeing the front of the shirt. Even though I flipped it, because we created those valleys that touched through to the countertop, this is actually going to dye some of the front of the shirt in this pattern as well, which is why the scrunch dye is actually pretty cool. Pretty simple, pretty cool. All right, I'm going to leave it like that. Then I'm going to come back with my black. Again, I'm not going as heavy on the dye here because it's already half saturated in dye. I just want to cover the white areas. And I don't need to creep up too much on this one. It's already been done. but I will bring it just a little bit closer to the orange. You can already see it's pulling in here a little bit. That's okay. So I'm going to leave it there like this. At this point, put this in a bag. You want all of that moisture to stay in there. It really helps the dyes react. You don't want them to dry out. So put it in a bag, put it somewhere warm for 24 hours. And when you rinse this out, the way that I'm going to rinse this, because the black might bleed into the orange part, and we don't really want that too much. So rinse with cold water first. What the cold water does is it releases all the soda ash. You want to rinse out the soda ash before untying anything. So I'll rinse this lots with cold water on both sides and then work out to the edges. That will release most of the soda ash. Then you can start to untie and really rinse until the water turns clear when it's cold, and then start to raise the temperature. The temperature, once it's hotter, it will start to release the rest of the dye that's on the shirt. So gently go from cold to hot, and then as hot as you can, rinse that out, and then you can throw it through a wash cycle with Blue Dawn soap or Synthropol if you have it. Those will help get rid of all the extra dye. Wash it hot, and then dry it hot, iron it out, and we'll see you for the reveal.